When I was in my last year of college, I started to think about applying to rabbinical school. I told a classmate of mine who was a very serious Catholic of my interest in being a rabbi, and he asked me, "Were you called?" I thought to myself, called? So I said, "No, actually I applied." So it was interesting because we were really talking past each other. He, coming from the Catholic tradition, had a very strong sense and understanding of what it meant to be called, to have God reach out to you as an individual and help guide you on your path. And in the Jewish circles I grew up with, we didn't use language such as that. But over the years, as I pursued rabbinical school and entered the rabbinate, I came to understand that, in fact, there is a calling. There is a sense that this is something I was drawn to do and was the path that perhaps God wanted for me. In last week's portion and this week's portion, we have examples of calls. In last week's Parsha Lech Lecha, Abraham is called by God to leave his parents' home and to go to the land of Canaan. And in this week's Parsha, the same language, Lech Lecha, is used when Abraham is told to take his only son, whom he loves, Isaac, and offer him up as a sacrifice. Both sections really help us struggle with what does it mean to have a sense that God has called you, has put you on a particular path, and how do you know if it's the right path? How do you know if it's God calling you or some other force that's really directing you on a path that's not such a good one? Martin Marty is a wonderful theologian in the University of Chicago, and he's written on this in a wonderful book that was put out a number of years ago. Bill Moyers had a series on the book of Genesis, people talking about its themes and how the book of Genesis speaks to our lives. Martin Marty wrote an article in a study guide for the Genesis series called Recognizing God's Call, in which he kind of struggles with how do you know if you have that sense that God is reaching out to you, how do you know it's true? How do you know it's not somebody trying to manipulate you or take you on the wrong path? And so what he suggests is that first we have to be open to those messages that God is trying to send to us. And he goes on to say, trust the half-certain more than the cocksure. When somebody speaks to you with a sense of this is the way, this is the path, don't necessarily jump. Test it by your understanding, your sense of what's right, the values with which you've been raised. He says, those who test their call in community more than those who go it alone are better off. Be part of a community that's also trying to discern the path. But in the end, he says that Abraham and Sarah provide wonderful models for understanding the importance of being open to when God calls. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I hope you'll follow that call and hope that it'll also bring you into the midst of this congregation, into active Jewish life. Shabbat Shalom.